All right. Reminetti, the podium is yours.
Thank you. God bless you all. God bless you in the mighty name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Our topic tonight is the second siege of Jerusalem. We saw the first siege when Daniel was carried away and taken away captive. And in the second siege of Jerusalem, there is a clear point of nexus between secular history and biblical history. The date of the second siege is the nexus that allows the biblical chronologist to escape the Bermuda Triangle and find solid ground in the Roman Gregorian calendars we use today. The perfection with which an event of biblical history can be matched with the same event recorded on an ancient cuneiform Babylonian inscription is probably beyond coincidence, for Daniel had the oversight of Babylon's historic inscriptions during this period of Babylonian history. Finally, the first biblical check on the relationship between the biblical chronology and the secular is sealed on Daniel's first and last night of being third in the kingdom of Babylon. Last week, I mentioned that the vessels of the Lord taken by Nebuchadnezzar in his first and second siege of Jerusalem would make an ironic appearance at the fall of Babylon. And here it is, Daniel chapter 5. We'll kind of be in there for a while if you want to turn there. Daniel 5:1, Belshazzar, the king, made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords and drank wine before the 1,000. This was some party, but with 1,000 lords at the party, who was guarding the walls of Babylon. Ah, who cares? Eat, drink, be merry, for tomorrow we die. Actually, they would. Daniel 5:2, Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple, which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines might drink therein. As Belshazzar tasted of the wine, he suddenly had one of those great ideas. One of those great ideas that sound really good at the time, but turned out to be a pretty bad idea. Then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of God, which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines drank of them. Notice that Belshazzar's wives were already at the dinner. This becomes important as we read on. Daniel 5:4. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver, of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. Real inclusive, like all kinds of gods. Didn't matter, gold ones, silver ones, brass ones. In the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Later, Daniel, who wasn't there yet, will describe these as part of God's hand. For a spiritual phenomena to represent the hand of God, it must have been huge. The fingers must have been massive. Everyone saw it, and everyone was filled with fear and panic. As they say, the handwriting was on the wall. And those are some pretty specific instructions about where the writing was in the dining hall. It was against the candlestick, and it was plastered on the wall. These weren't some ethereal letters that floated away within an hour. They were written on the plaster. They were carved on the palace wall, the way the history of ancient Babylon was carved in clay tablets. There is no reason to think that those huge letters weren't still all over the wall when Cyrus arrived later that evening. Now, it doesn't take a bunch of miracles to be carried away captive in this life, but if we're ever going to get out of captivity, it always takes God's miraculous power. That's what's happening here. The 70 years for Babylon are up. The moment of God's liberty for his people had come. The hour had struck, and Babylon had become Miracle City. Okay, Daniel 5:6. Then the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loosed, and his knees smote one against another. We see stuff like this in the Three Stooges, right? But this wasn't funny. Well, it was a little funny. But Belshazzar was utterly terrified. He was faced with the supernatural power of God, which he, the king of Babylon, had absolutely no control over. Verse 7, the king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. You bet he cried aloud. Can you hear this terrified, drunken king shouting and yelling as he runs in circles in the ballroom, knees knocking, pale as a ghost? Dinner's definitely over for sure. At some point soon after, the wise men show up. As we'll see, Daniel is not among them. And the king spake and said unto the wise men of Babylon, whosoever shall read this writing and show me the interpretation thereof shall be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about his neck, and he shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Daniel 5, verse 10. Now the queen, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet house, and the queen spake and said, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, nor let thy countenance be changed. Word of the terror in the dining hall had spread throughout the palace, and perhaps even the city. From the queen's words about the king's countenance, it's plain he was still a mess. We'd say that he was still white as a sheet. Now, we just read that Belshazzar's wives were drinking wine with him. So who is this queen who had nothing to do with Belshazzar's royal party? That's right. We went over this last session. Here, queen is the office of the queen mother. She was either Belshazzar's mother or grandmother. From the testimony of the Nabonidus Chronicle in ancient Babylon cuneiform, it sounds like the queen mother is Belshazzar's mother. For this chronicle, also called ABC 7, states that in the 9th year of Nabonidus, on the 10th day of the first month, the queen mother died. Here's Grayson's translation. The 9th year of Nabonidus, the king was in Tama, while the prince, the officers, and the army were in Akkad. The king in the month of Nisan in Hebrew, to Babylon. It gets a little choppy because they're missing words in places. Did not come. The rest of line 11 is missing. On the 5th day of the month, Nisanu, the queen mother, and then the rest of line 13 is missing. Line 14, she died. The prince and his army were in mourning for 3 days. The crown prince would have been Belshazzar. Though the prince is unnamed, the elements of co-regency appear. The heir to the throne is proclaimed and is exercising royal authority. Only his father was not subject to his rule. So perhaps it was Nabonidus's mother, Belshazzar's grandmother, who died. And because of Belshazzar's preeminence in the co-regency, his mother, instead of one of Nabonidus's other wives, took the vacant office of queen mother. Daniel 5, verse 11. There is a man in thy kingdom, says Mom, in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. Holy gods is Aramaic for Elohim. And in the days of thy father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, Elohim, was found in him, whom the king Nebuchadnezzar, thy father, the king, I say, thy father, made master of magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. This section of Daniel was written in Aramaic, and Elohim is the plural of the Aramaic word for God. I'm saying that incorrectly. The Aramaic plural for Elohim is by using the word God in Aramaic. So all the translators except the Septuagint translate this as holy gods. In a way, I like the translation because it reminds me of the Hebrew plural of majesty involved in naming the one true God in his role as creator of the heavens and the earth. We read God singular all the time. Only a capital G reminds us of his glory and might. The other reason the translators go with holy gods is they assume the queen mother was an unbeliever, but her support for Daniel shows she wasn't. Daniel had been forgotten after Nebuchadnezzar. Why? We can see some of why in the story of Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel's enemies in the educational community of Babylon marked Daniel for following only the one true God. Belshazzar's drinking party was very inclusive. Everyone's gods were welcome except the one true God, who was mocked in the use of the temple's sacred vessels. Under Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel had been the master of 4 groups: the Magi, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. In a manner similar to the way the meaning prophet can be extended to the false prophets, so the meaning of Magi can be favorable, as in the Magi of Matthew 2:1, or unfavorable, as in Bar Jesus, the sorcerer of the book of Acts. Here it is, Matthew 2:1. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men, and that's the word Magi in a plural form, from the east to Jerusalem. It's surprising how the context of the word magi can change the English translation from wise men to sorcerer. The change is dramatic but proper. This occurs in Acts 13, 6 through 8. And when they had gone through the isle unto Paphos, they found a certain sorcerer. Sorcerer is the word magi, a false prophet, a Jew whose name was Bar Jesus. Acts 13, verse 8. But Elimas, the sorcerer, and again, that's the word magi, for so is his name by interpretation, withstood them, seeking to turn away the deputy from the faith. So it's difficult to know just how dark these Babylonian offices were. The Chaldeans seemed to believe, like some 19th century psychologists, that there is a science to the interpretation of dreams. And if Nebuchadnezzar could say what his dream was, they could interpret it. We know there were some dark characters in these academic arenas because of how they go after Daniel under Darius. It is also likely that some of the educational community had helped kick Daniel out of the academy entirely after Nebuchadnezzar died. Otherwise, all we know is that these were the men of learning in Babylon, the PhDs. Among these learned men were some that kept star diaries and used pretty advanced mathematics to predict eclipses. From the days of Nebuchadnezzar, when Daniel was master of the Magi and the other learned men, we have star diaries dated with the year of Nebuchadnezzar and eclipses which did or did not occur in those years. Now, the star diaries began in 652 BC, and Daniel stood before Nebuchadnezzar almost 50 years later, 603 BC. So although Daniel did not institute the diaries, he oversaw their production through the critical years of the astronomical history of the ancient kings of Ptolemy's king list. There are also records of the Babylonian interest in the stars that are far older, but the star diaries are a unique genre and very reliable. You might hear when we talk about the star diaries, someone say Labat, L-B-A-T. That stands for Late Babylonian Astronomical Texts. This work was published by Brown University in 1955 with Abram Sachs as author and editor. In this publication, Dr. Sachs categorized and numbered 1,500 drawings of the ancient cuneiform clay tablets. Because if you don't know what the letters mean, you can't translate them yet, just copy the squiggles. And that's what he did. He drew pictures. Herman Hunger completed Sachs' work of publishing English translations of the Babylonian astronomical observations in astronomical diaries and related texts from Babylonia, published in the 80s and 90s. This 7-volume work translated each cuneiform tablet and followed the numbers assigned to each 1955 drawing. From this, then, come the references such as Labat 1420. Most of the original cuneiform tablets, though, not the drawings, are in the British Museum and are identified by the abbreviation BM for British Museum, and given the tablet numbers such as BM 38462. One important tablet, though, VAT 4956, is in a museum in Berlin, and from that museum comes its abbreviation. These ancient clay tablets were literally diaries that contain political, historic, economic, climatic, and astronomical information. A Saros table is a second genre of astronomical observation recorded in Babylonian cuneiform. Rather than a year-by-year diary, a Saros table supplies a catalog of eclipses based presumably on past diaries according to the mathematical 19-year pattern that forms a Saros cycle, a pattern used in predicting eclipses. It's very possible that Ptolemy's Almagest, the source from which Ptolemy's king list was handed down to us, also relied on the ancient Babylonian star diaries. They're called star diaries because there is detailed information about astronomical formations as well. The eclipse information is precise to the hour, so modern astronomers can easily verify the eclipses in turn verify Nebuchadnezzar's reign in our modern Roman Gregorian solar calendar. Anyhow, Daniel is the master of those who kept the star diaries all the way through the reign of Nebuchadnezzar. However, after Nebuchadnezzar, though, except for God, Daniel was barely remembered. That was about to change, for God did not forget his prophet. Daniel 5:13. Then was Daniel brought before the king. And the king spake and said to Daniel, Art thou Daniel, which art of the children of the captivity of Judah, who the king, my father or grandfather, brought out of Jewry? And I have heard of thee that the spirit of the gods, Elohim, is in thee, that light and understanding and excellent wisdom is found in thee. And now the wise men, the astrologers, have been brought in before me, that they should read this writing and make known unto me the interpretation thereof. But they could not show the interpretation of the thing. And I have heard thee, that thou canst make interpretations and dissolve doubts. Now, if thou canst read the writing and make known to me the interpretation thereof, thou shalt be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about thy neck, and shalt be third ruler in the kingdom. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, let thy gifts be to thyself, and give thy rewards to another. Yet I will read the writing unto the king and make known to him the interpretation. 18. O thou king, the most high God gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father a kingdom and majesty and glory and honor. Chapter 5, verse 20. But when his heart was lifted up and his mind hardened in pride, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beasts, and his dwelling was with the asses. They fed him with the grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High God ruled in the kingdom of men, and that he appointeth over it whomsoever he will. That's amazing when we're praying for a government and for our country, and bearing stuff like that in our minds. These events are recorded in Daniel 4, a chapter written or spoken by Nebuchadnezzar himself. During the later years of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar declared himself a believer in the one true God. Based on Daniel's absence from the court of the following kings, it's plain Babylon quickly returned to its polytheistic traditions. Verse 22, and thou his son, O Belshazzar, hath not humbled thine heart, though thou knewest all this. So he's really a grandkid, therefore these things must have occurred late. And that does seem to be the right window for Nebuchadnezzar when in his years around late 30th and 40th years, in there somewhere. And thou his son, O Belshazzar, hath not humbled thy heart, though thou knewest all this, but hast lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven, that they have brought the vessels of his house before thee, and thou and thy lords, thy wives and thy concubines have drunk wine in them. All this is by revelation. The king certainly did not fess up. Yeah, the dining room was probably a big mess and the temple vessels strewn everywhere and huge spiritual graffiti written all over the walls. But as Daniel is reciting the exact sequence of events, Belshazzar's blood pressure surely is rising. Daniel 5:23. And thou hast praised the gods of silver and gold, of brass, iron, wood, and stone, which see not, nor hear, nor know. And the God in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways, hast not thou glorified. Then was the part of the hand sent from him, and this writing was written. And this is the writing that was written. Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. Only a spiritual phenomena representing a part of God's fingers appeared. That's why they must have been gigantic. Literally, these Aramaic words read something like a weight for measuring, a shekel broken. Here's the interpretation, Daniel 5:26. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. 70 years, it's up. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting. And Perez, the kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. The interpretation in verse 28 is especially important historically. The Medes and the Persians worked together, but the kingdom was divided among them, at least administratively. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet and put a chain of gold about his neck and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. In that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. And Darius the Mede took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. So he was 62. While the entire city of Babylon was scrambled eggs from drinking and panic and fear, Cyrus the Persian waltzes in and with virtually no resistance takes the city of Babylon. But there's a skip in the biblical record, which, according to Daniel, is 628 is based on this particular focus. So this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. As we'll see from Isaiah and is widely accepted in secular history, the Persian Cyrus was in command when Babylon fell. However, the Mede, Darius, took the kingdom of Babylon. He was second in command to Cyrus through marriage, but that's another story. Daniel 6:1. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 princes, which should be over the whole kingdom. And over these three presidents, of whom Daniel was first, that the princes might give accounts unto them, and that the king should have no damage. When the kingdom of Babylon fell and the Medes and the Persians took over, how did Daniel get a promotion to be second in the king of Persia instead of third in the kingdom of Babylon? Maybe it went something like this. When Babylon fell and Belshazzar was killed in the struggle, Cyrus enters the palace and sees tables overturned and unusual gold and silver vessels strewn everywhere. Then he marvels as he turns and sees massive, regal Aramaic letters perfectly inscribed on the wall. He tries to interview some terrified, incoherent servants who are rambling about giant fingers and some guy named Belteshazzar. When he asks where this Belteshazzar is now, he's told that Belteshazzar is in the Babylonian throne room waiting for him. Then Cyrus the Persian, after conquering all Babylon in a single miraculous night, meets Daniel in the throne room. Daniel's clothed in royal scarlet with the Babylonian golden chain of authority about his neck. Then this absolutely unknown person who has full authority over all of Babylon kneels and surrenders and bows. Then he stands, opens a long scroll. You can hear a pin drop in the throne room, and Daniel asks, "May I?" Then with a nod from Cyrus, Daniel began to read, translating from the scroll of Isaiah into the Syriac he had learned as a youth in Nebuchadnezzar's court. Here's Isaiah 45, 1-6. What if he did read this? Maybe this is how it happened. I don't know. Thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him, and I will loose the loins of kings, to open before him the two-leaved gates, and the gates shall not be shut. He's reading from the scroll that's 160 years old, and he's naming Cyrus to his face, and he's been waiting for him. And how did God loose the loins of kings, as it says in Isaiah? He sent a massive, hand, godlike fingers to write giant Aramaic letters on the wall of Belshazzar's dining room. What follows are other events from the night Babylon fell. Cyrus recognized each of these events as Daniel read from the book of Isaiah. He recognized them as key events leading to his victory. The book of Isaiah would have been at least 160 years old. Here, Isaiah 45:2. I will go before thee and make the crooked paths straight. I will break in pieces the gates of brass and cut in sunder the bars of iron. The Hebrew verb tenses tend to pile up via context. Perhaps I will have should be understood, for all these events trace back to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden. How did God hold Cyrus's right hand? All of these enumerated events explain that figure of speech. Now here are the future events. And I will give thee the treasures of darkness and hidden riches of secret places, that thou mayest know that I, the Lord, which call thee by name, am the God of Israel. For Jacob my servant's sake, and Israel mine elect, I have even called thee by name. I have surnamed thee. Surnamed is not the same as calling by name. God is talking adoption there. He got God's last name. He's got Cyrus, adopted of God, something like that. But that surname means that's God's name. Though thou hast not known me, I have surnamed thee. I am the Lord, there is none else. There is no God beside me. I girded thee, though thou hast not known me, that they may know from the rising of the sun and from the west that there is none beside me. I am the Lord, there is no one else. There is none else. So now we know how Daniel prospered under Cyrus. One way or another, in one scenario or another, Cyrus heard the word and believed, and Daniel spoke the word. So that's how he prospered under Cyrus. This miracle-filled last night of Babylon marked the last moment in the 70 years of certitude and marks the first test of our nexus between biblical and secular history. It's another chapter involving lions before we know how Daniel prospered under Darius the Mede. Nevertheless, Daniel again had oversight over the Babylonian star diaries. We know that Daniel lived for at least 3 years beyond Jeremiah's prophecy of 70 years of servitude, because Daniel 8:1 tells us so. But this is a date floating about in the biblical chronologist's Bermuda Triangle, for the internal numbers of the Bible only connect us to years of captivity. Without a clear connection to secular history, a solid chronological ground is lacking. The Bible gives no more dates past the fall of Babylon, for there are no more kings of Judah to be numbered. However, we do have an eclipse-attested list of ancient secular kings and the length of their reigns. But where do we link up the biblical chronology with the secular history? For instance, plugging the secular history into Nebuchadnezzar 1 is awkward because there is no corresponding biblical event. So to take as much guesswork out as possible, there are really only 2 biblical events that correspond to a royal year of Nebuchadnezzar. One of these is the second siege in Nebuchadnezzar's 9th year. That's the one we're doing. And the third siege in Nebuchadnezzar's 19th year. But I chose the second siege, because there is a shard of the Babylonian Chronicle that describes the second siege of Jerusalem almost perfectly. Of the third siege, no Babylonian record survived. First of all, just as co-regencies were frequent and regularly occurring in Israel, so also are they often encountered in the secular kingdoms of the world. We've already seen that Sargon II's co-regent was Sennacherib. Biblically, we know this because the Bible called him a king and a tartan, a supreme Assyrian commander. Historically, Sennacherib's use of royal authority in completing administrative duties in Assyria during Sargon II's reign was so prevalent that some secular historians have argued that Sennacherib was Sargon II's throne name. However, it is probable that the Assyrian terminology such as crown prince was used instead of king or co-regent. We also just saw Belshazzar referred to as a crown prince in ABC 7, despite the Bible calling him a king. By the way, ABC stands for Assyrian and Babylonian Chronicles, which refers to Grayson's translation in his book by that same name in 1975. Anyhow, the Bible will call a foreign leader king according to that king's calendar, but he will reckon the royal authority of the Bible will reckon the royal authority of co-regents according to its own principles. If the heir is declared as with the crown prince, and if the heir is exercising royal authority during the reign of a senior king, the Bible counts this person as a king and co-regent. This is the case with Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadnezzar's co-regency of 1 year is marked with a biblical paradox, as many Hebrew co-regencies were. Babylonian kings were required to participate in a specific religious festival, the festival of Akitu, to be, according to Babylonian reckoning, a king. Hence, the Babylonian title for a co-regent is crown prince rather than king. For the crown prince would not celebrate the festival of Akitu until the years of his sole rule or his senior rule. This is the reckoning from ABC 5 of Nebuchadnezzar's ascent to his father's throne. From obverse line 11, it says, and on 1 Yuli Note. Oh, this is where we're on a virtual safari. We're digging for archaeological treasures. So if you have your pit helmet, if you've got your boots, now is the time to put them on. But you have to use a lot of imagination here. I'll try to give all the references because I know it moves fast. And if I were out there in the audience and I was hearing all this stuff, I'd want to triple check everything. I'll put it all on the notes as well. Okay, so on 1 Yuli Note, that's Tishri in September. It means month. Note means month. He sat on the royal throne in Babylon. Obverse, OBV, or stands for obverse. Obverse means the top side of the cuneiform tablet. Page 2, or the back side of the tablet, is called its reverse side. So obverse 12, in the accession year, Nebuchadnezzar went back to the Hatti land and until the month of Sabbatu Note, that's the 11th month, early 604. Then it says in obverse 13, marched unopposed through Hatti land in the month of Sabbatu, that's the 11th month, early 604. He took the heavy tribute of the Hatti territory to Babylon. The crown prince of Babylon was seated on his father's throne, but his first royal year would not begin until Nisan, when Nebuchadnezzar would participate in the feast of Akitu. Line 12 on the obverse or front side of the Babylonian tablet shows that Nebuchadnezzar left himself a little bit more than a month for the journey from the nations round about Jerusalem to his throne in Babylon. Obverse 14 describes the Akitu festival. In the month of Nisanu, that's Nisan, spring 604, he took the hands of Bel and the son of Bel and celebrated the Akitu festival. In Babylonian reckoning, this is Nebuchadnezzar I. The biblical reckoning, on the other hand, ignored this feast as a prerequisite to ruling with the authority of a biblical co-regent. In biblical reckoning, as the declared heir with full authority, the crown prince of Babylon, he is biblically a junior regent. Hence, the same style for marking the co-regency and total years of a Hebrew king is applied with Nebuchadnezzar's royal years, and his co-regency is marked with the biblical paradoxes. We saw one such paradox in the last session when King Nebuchadnezzar trained Daniel to stand before him for 3 years, yet somehow Daniel stood before Nebuchadnezzar to interpret the dream of King Nebuchadnezzar in the 2nd year. Let me go ahead and put that up again. Where'd it go? There it is. Should be coming.
Yep,
Yeah.
there it is.
Okay. So synchronisms, and you can see each one there. I'll let it sit for a while. But there, the one inside the brackets, that shows the co-regency. And the co-regency number is always 1 year more than the sole regency. And this is important. Jehoiakim 4. We'll take a look at this in more depth. Here are 2 more biblical paradoxes marking Nebuchadnezzar's single year of co-regency with Nabopolassar. The first mathematical paradox is framed by comparing the description of the 3rd siege of Jerusalem in 2 Kings 25:8. And in the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which is the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem. And its counterpart about the 3rd siege is in Jeremiah 52:12. Now in the 5th month, in the 10th day of the month, which was the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, which served the king of Babylon into Jerusalem. And then comparing that with Jeremiah 52:29's account of the 3rd siege, we get the paradox. In the 18th year, says Jeremiah 52:29, in the 18th year, not the 19th, the 18th, he carried away captive from Jerusalem 832 persons. Because we know of the biblical paradoxes with many of the Hebrew co-regencies, we can be certain that Jeremiah 52:12 and 52:19, same chapter even, is the Bible's reckoning of Nebuchadnezzar's total years of rule, including his co-regency. While in contrast, Jeremiah 52:29 is the biblical count according to Nebuchadnezzar's sole years of rule. Furthermore, assuring us that the biblical count of Zedekiah 11 corresponds to Nebuchadnezzar's 19th total year of rule, Jeremiah 32:1 asserts that Zedekiah 10 is indeed, as we expected, Nebuchadnezzar's 18th total year of rule. The word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord in the 10th year of Zedekiah, king of Judah, which was the 18th year of Nebuchadnezzar. To many, these contrasting numbers are very frustrating, but to those who have studied the paradoxes of the Hebrew kings, it is plain that the Bible is spelling out paradoxical markings for the co-regency of Nebuchadnezzar. Let me change this screen a little bit, move it down some. This is the year of the siege with only biblical numbers. There's 11 Jehoiakim. This is not the 3rd siege we've just been talking about. We'll come back a little bit and talk a little bit more about the 3rd siege. It's down here too somewhere. The third year, and then there's the total years 8 and 7, and then a lot of stuff happened in the midst of this 2nd siege. With this background, we are ready to evaluate an apparent contradiction between the Bible's record of the 2nd siege and the record given in the cuneiform of the Babylonian Chronicles. On the one hand, lines 11 and 12 of the reverse side of Babylonian Chronicle ABC 5 state that Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to Jerusalem after the Nisan of his 7th royal year. Reverse, line 11. In the 7th year of Nebuchadnezzar, the month Chislev, that's the 9th month, the king of Babylon assembled his army, and after he had invaded Hattiland, an area just north of Israel, he laid siege to the city of Judah. However, on the other hand, in 2 Kings 24:12, the biblical record of the second siege of Jerusalem states that Nebuchadnezzar's reign, in which Jehoiakim surrendered after Nisan of his 8th year. And here I'll read it to you. And Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylon, he and his mother and his servants and his princes and his officers, and the king of Babylon took him in the 8th year of his reign. So Babylonian Chronicles 7th, Bible 8th. 2 Chronicles 36:10, in combination with the reverse side of ABC 5, assures us that Jehoiachin's surrender took place during that same year that Nebuchadnezzar invaded and set siege. From the second part of the 12th line of the reverse side of ABC 5, on the 2nd day of the month of Adar, that's the 12th month, March, he conquered the city and took the king, Jeconiah, who's also called Jehoiachin, took him prisoner. This matches superbly with the testimony of 2 Chronicles 36:10. And when the year was expired, King Nebuchadnezzar sent and brought him to Babylon with goodly vessels of the house of the Lord, and made Zedekiah his brother king over Judah and Jerusalem. When the year was expired, when it was on its last legs, just before the new year, in the 12th month, the invasion year was in the 12th month when Jehoiakim surrendered. The Bible plainly calls the invasion year the 8th year, while the Babylonian record calls the invasion year the 7th year. The Bible is speaking of Nebuchadnezzar's total years of rule. The Babylonian Chronicle is speaking only of Nebuchadnezzar's sole years of rule. This difference in reckoning happens also in the record of Nebuchadnezzar's first year of rule. Here's the biblical record of Nebuchadnezzar's first year, according to Jeremiah 25:1. The word that came to Jeremiah concerning all the people of Judah in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, that was the first year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. And then in 46:2 of Jeremiah, against Egypt came the army of Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, which was by the river Euphrates in Carchemish, which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, smote in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. In the biblical reckoning, Nebuchadnezzar's first year was Jehoiakim's 4th royal year. And in this year, the 4th year of Jehoiakim and the first royal year of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar won his great victory at Carchemish. In contrast, the Babylonian Chronicles do not include this victory as part of Nebuchadnezzar's first royal year. On the obverse of the same tablet, ABC 5, in lines 1 through 8, is the record of Nebuchadnezzar's victory over the Egyptians. In the 21st year, the king of Akkad stayed in his own land. Nebuchadnezzar, his eldest son, the crown prince, mustered the Babylonian army and took command of his troops. He marched to Carchemish, which is on the bank of the Euphrates, and crossed the river Euphrates to go against the Egyptian army, which lay in Carchemish. They fought with each other, and the Egyptian army withdrew before him. He accomplished their defeat and beat them to non-existence, as the rest of the Egyptian army, which had escaped from the defeat so quickly that no weapon had reached them in the district of Hamath. The Babylonian troops overtook and defeated them, so that not a single man escaped to his own country. Yeah, you can't get these ancient steals or these ancient historical records without some blatant boasting. Did they kill every single guy? I don't know. At the same time, Nebuchadnezzar conquered the whole area of Hamath, a region just north of Damascus, including a city by that same name. It is only after this victory at Carchemish that the obverse of the chronicle concerning the early years of Nebuchadnezzar II, ABC 5, in lines 9 through 11, records that Nebuchadnezzar is not reckoned king of Babylon yet. For 21 years, it's the same place, same passage. For 21 years, Nabopolassar had been king of Babylon, and when on 8 Abunote, the 5th month, he went to his destiny. In the month of Ulonote, Ulu, the 6th month, Nebuchadnezzar returned to Babylon. And on 1 Ulonote, he sat on the royal throne of Babylon. And in the ninth, and in the month of Nisanu, that's Nisan, he took the hands of Bel and the son of Bel and celebrated the Akitu festival. And that's when he becomes king. He sat on the throne earlier, but he was officially, his first year of reign was then. So he had an accession few months, but he wasn't counted as king. And then he was counted as king at the Akitu festival. At that time, the Battle of Carchemish, the Babylonian chronicles do not reckon Nebuchadnezzar as king, but as crown prince only. But his first year is included in the biblical reckoning, for the Bible considers Nebuchadnezzar's year as crown prince to be a co-regency. Hence, the 1 year difference is only an apparent difference, whether we count 8 years from the Battle of Carchemish in 605, 604, or whether we count 7 years from 604 to 603. In the end, the result is the same. The year of the second siege of Babylon will be 597. Am I saying that right? I might have mistyped that. I think it's 597, 598. And that's where I'd like to officially connect. Oh, good typo right there. We'll have it on the chart. And that's where I'd like to officially connect the biblical numbers to the secular numbers. For because the Babylonian tablets document the exact events of a biblical year, that year can be converted from Hebrew years to the Roman Gregorian calendar solar, and the eclipses documented in the Babylonian star diaries, and by the eclipses found in Ptolemy's Almagest. We're set. We're on solid ground. We have escaped the Sargasso Sea of the Bermuda Triangle. Let me scroll this down. Let me see, I can scroll this down a little bit, and you can kind of see. Yeah, there it is. Stuff in italics and underlined is stuff that is from the king list that is witnessed to by all those eclipses. So you can kind of see how when you plug a few of the numbers in and you just use logic to go backwards and forwards, they all kind of fit. Yeah, did I get it right? Yeah, 598, 597. You have to watch it. The historians will say 597. That's very accurate. We're talking about a royal year that starts in Nisan of 598 and goes until the Nisan of 597. The battle itself is actually going to be in 597, the actual siege. So you get both numbers. You just have to kind of hang in there. As opposed to the Syrian and Assyrian tablets and obelisks that contradict or omit biblical records, the record on the reverse side of ABC 5 conforms to the Bible in depth and in specifics. It is probably not a coincidence that Daniel was the master of the Babylonian PhDs in the days of this cuneiform tablet. They match really perfectly. In the 7th year of Nebuchadnezzar, in the month of Chislev, the 9th month, the king of Babylon assembled his army after he had invaded Hatti land, and he laid siege to the city of Judah. And that matches the record of the siege in 2 Kings. And then ABC continues on the 2nd day of the month of Adar, that's the 12th month, March, he conquered the city and took the king prisoner. This too conformed, as we saw earlier, perfectly, really, to the biblical record, Second Chronicles 36:10. And when the year was expired, King Nebuchadnezzar sent and brought him to Babylon with goodly vessels of the house of the Lord. It extends, the narrative extends even more perfectly. The Babylonian record allows a potential reconstruction of the last week of Nebuchadnezzar's second siege. And he, Jehoiachin, reigned 3 months and 10 days in Jerusalem. He did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. The 3 months of Jehoiachin's reign in Jerusalem then would have been Kislev, the 9th month, Tevet, the 10th, Shavet, the 11th. The last 10 days of Jehoiachin's rule would have been reckoned in Adar, the 12th month. Here, the two sets of records depart slightly. The Babylonian record is that the city fell on the 2nd day of the 12th month, while the biblical record is that Jehoiachin ruled in Jerusalem until the 10th day. While this one discrepancy does nothing to impact the almost perfect accord of the biblical and Babylonian records, there are a couple of possible explanations. One is that the Babylonian record focused on the day Jerusalem surrendered, while the biblical record focused on when Jehoiachin's rule was conferred upon Zedekiah. Similarly, a second explanation revolves around the events revealed in 2 Kings 24:13 through 16 that took place from the time of the city's surrender until Zedekiah was elevated king in Jerusalem. And he carried out thence And he carried out thence all the treasures of the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces the vessels of gold, which Solomon, king of Israel, had made in the temple of the Lord, as the Lord had said. So this is one of the processes. And then also he carried away all Jerusalem and all the princes and all the mighty men of valor, even 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and smiths. None remained save the poorest sort of the people of the land. And he carried away Jehoiachin to Babylon, the king's mother and the king's wives and his officers and the mighty of the land. Those he carried into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon. All the men of might, even 7,000, and craftsmen and smiths 1,000, and all were strong and apt for war. Even them the king of Babylon brought captive to Babylon. So you can see it's kind of a long extended process of time, may have taken a few days, so that while one says the second, one says the 10th, they're really quite close. Then in 2 Kings 24:17, Nebuchadnezzar finally makes Zedekiah king, and the king of Babylon made Mattaniah, his father's brother, king in his stead, and changed his name to Zedekiah. So finally, the biblical records in 2 Chronicles 36:9-10, and 2 Kings 9:13-17, and the Babylonian record for the 13th line of the reverse side of ABC 5 agree that great wealth from the temple was taken to Babylon. However, the Babylonian Chronicles, they make it sound like a nice thing. From reverse 13, it says, he installed in his place a king, Zedekiah, that is, of his own choice, and he had received rich, and after he had received rich tribute, he sent forth to Babylon. Yeah, the Chronicle received rich tribute. Yeah, Zedekiah just gave me all this stuff. Sure. The Chronicles of Babylon reckons the wealth of the temple and the palace as rich tribute. This rich tribute would imply gifts of loving subjection to the monarch. Here's what we know about the second siege from the biblical record without the numbers. That's what we saw up here. There's the second siege in all of its glory. And then when you plug in the numbers, it tells the rest of the story. You can see 609, and this is where we began the story at the very bottom. The dates of the Hebrew kings were given according to each year's king's rule. Because these calendar conversions occurred so long ago, when the dates are given by secular historians for these events, Ptolemy's canon is as handed down from the Greek calendar and converted to the Roman calendar is the primary authority. Ptolemy's canon or king list was an ancient list held by ancient astronomers as a common dating system for recording the cycles of celestial events. The chronology was passed on by Ptolemy as part of the Almagest, which was a sophisticated astronomical treatise. Over time, this commonly held history of the ancient kings became even more established as more and more ancient records came to light, and as modern astronomers developed the mathematical skills to verify the ancient eclipses surrounding the king list. There are 19 lunar eclipses recorded in Ptolemy's Almagest. This sequence of 19 begins in 721 BC and ends in 137 AD. It spans over 850 years. Ptolemy's canon, also called the king list, gives the reigns of 43 kings from Nabu Nasir in 747 to Antonius Pius in 160 AD, a span of over 900 years. In a sense, all 19 lunar eclipses lend credibility to the overall picture of Ptolemy's canon. Nevertheless, for clarity and focus, I'm only counting the lunar eclipses surrounding the lives of the Babylonian and Persian kings. However, I'm counting other eclipses from the Babylonian cuneiform sources older than the Almagest. Beyond the Almagest and the eclipses from the cuneiform observations of the Babylonian star diaries, the star diaries record complex astronomical phenomena involving planetary alignments. These can also be used by modern astronomers to guarantee the accuracy of the recorded events. Here's an example of the verification process. Labatt 1420 from the British Museum, piece 38-462, describes the eclipse in the Babylonian fifth month, that is in our July or August. The Babylonian star diary has Nebuchadnezzar 25, Nebuchadnezzar's 25th year of sole rule, as its date. It describes the eclipse as coming 3 hours after sunset and being a total eclipse. Two astronomers, based on this description, two guys called Leo and Fiala, verified this eclipse and its date in 580 BC. There may be some within the sound of my voice who know how to go to the NASA webpage and personally verify the eclipse's month and year for themselves. From Ptolemy's Almagest and from the Babylonian Star Diaries, this process of verification can be and has been used 13 times to verify the dates of the reigns of Nebuchadnezzar up to and through the reign of Artaxerxes. These eclipses alone verify dates from 594 BC until 491 BC. It is probable that using the Babylonian Star Diaries descriptions of other astronomical events each and every year of this period could be verified. Still, 13 verified eclipses over a span of just a century is very certain. We can escape the chronologist's Bermuda Triangle. Here's the chronology, again, from the dates. So our verified star and eclipse dated chronology past the Bible's first synchronism, the one we have been nurturing for the past 2 sessions, from the first of Jehoiakim to the fall of Babylon, was indeed 70 years, and it was indeed at the end of Nebuchadnezzar's 3rd generation. On this, both the biblical numbers and Ptolemy's king list agree. In the next session, we will cover the 3rd siege and 2 other synchronisms given by the Bible to guard and verify the secular history of the ancients. So bless your hearts. You guys are the best. Love you.